Is this it? Is this it?
I'm going to take you through my first car race win, my strategy and my thought process as I came from 9th on the grid to 1st by over 7 seconds in under 20 minutes, in one of the least powerful cars there. You'll learn how I find grip, navigate backmarkers, manage my pace, plan moves as I navigate these wet and super tricky conditions. And there is a pretty devastating bombshell coming at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around to find out what that is. So a very brief bit of background on the race so you understand what's going on. This is my 4th ever race in a car and the wettest conditions I've ever driven a car in. But I do have a lot of wet racing experience from karting, and the car I'm driving here is a 1964 Hillman Imp, which isn't far off a go-kart. In another video you'll see how my first 2 races at Silverstone went catastrophically wrong, but somehow this race that I won went the worst of them all. Anyway, you'll see what happens later, so let's get started with the analysis so you can understand what I did right to take the victory. Now, as dull as it may seem, I'm going to start with the outlap because that is one of the most crucial stages, especially when there's been a change of conditions. This is my chance to assess the track, look at standing water, changes of tarmac, overtaking opportunities, and get an understanding for where I want to position the car in the coming laps. I also, of course, watched the races before mine so I could understand other people's thoughts on racing lines and overtaking opportunities, but I also wanted to work it out for myself because other people aren't necessarily right if they haven't tried other options. True to my advice here, the first thing I do pulling out onto the track is I hold the steering wheel at a constant load as I'm turning and I go flat out on the throttle just to see, is it going to slide? It doesn't, so for next time I know I can push harder and the limit is beyond this point. Now the format is you pull out, you go onto the grid, and then you have 2 laps to assess the conditions, then you line up for your real race start. So I get 1 practice start in, and as you can see, it's not a very good one, but this actually benefits me long term, so keep an eye on that grey Anglia in front. He has tons of wheel spin off the practice start, and what this means is he lays down a load of rubber on his grid spot, and then when we're at the actual race start, he spins up even more. I am conscious not to generate wheel spin and not put rubber down because the whole principle of a wet line is to avoid the dry line where the rubber is, as rubber in the wet is very, very slippy. Now into turn 1 on these green flag laps, you see me just playing with the wheel, going back and forth, just testing for grip. How responsive is it in that area of the track? You're of course quite restricted because everyone's going around slowly, you're only allowed to use half of the track width to weave, and there's other cars around you. Now I narrated my thoughts on these green flag laps live so you can listen to them now, but for some context, James is the other imp driver in that blue imp, and thanks to some reshuffles of the grid from the day before, he was starting in pole. Now he and the imp are of course very strong in the wet, so when I saw he was on pole, I knew I had to really focus and try and get to him as soon as possible, otherwise he'd drive off into the distance, never to be seen again.
I'm making sure to have a really good look around. Texture of the tarmac, where the curves are, testing it on the brakes. There is wet on the inside. I think we're probably going to be on the curve a bit there. There's a good opportunity, fairly dry on the inside. I think we're going to be all the way around the outside of the corner. It feels good on dry line there. Okay on the curb. 100 brake horsepower is more than enough when the car is this light and there's this little grip. No way is that James Dixon on pole position. What happened there? I got promoted 2 places. It must be 1st and 2nd then, because he finished 3rd or 4th. Oh, James, do it for the Ints. You got this, man. Yeah, lots of revs, aggressive on the start. Going to be aggressive, make up the time. We could have a win out of this. Let's go and get them, Tiger. Woo-hoo!
Right, here we are for the start then, and as I mentioned earlier, that Anglia has got a terrible start and I'm right on the back of him, up the inside, off the rubber in a strong position. The Anglia pulls away in a straight line with that extra power, but the door is still open for me to go up the inside of the Cortina. Now you can see me looking to the left a lot because I'm not entirely sure if he's seen me, but he gives me the room and it's nice, tight, fair racing. Being on the inside off the rubber for the exit, I get a good drive, I'm able to use the hill of paddock and I've got the inside line for Druids. I brake late as I'm trying to defend my position and Druids is a massive overtaking opportunity, and then I get a little slide on the exit as well, obviously trying to find the grip, which means I'm defending into Graham Hill. Now, having never driven the track in the wet before, my default anyway is to be mid-track off the rubber, so I'm sort of defending and sort of just going on what I predict the wet line to be at this stage. Again, a tad defensive into 30s and I get a bit of a slide on the entry into clearways, just pushing and trying to find the grip. We'll find out later that clearways is a pretty important corner to get right. And then, even with the Anglia pulling out many car lengths down the straight, and I had no idea where I was going to be braking to Paddock Hill, I came from a completely different postcode right up the inside. It wasn't planned particularly far in advance, but I saw where he braked and he looked very steady, so I thought I'm going to brake later than that, and then pretty much found myself passing anyway. I didn't need to be majorly aggressive or block him, we were pretty much just on different lines and braking points. And that move isn't even the furthest back I came from during the race. This wasn't the last I'd see of the grey Anglia though. So going into Druids again, slightly defending, trying to keep off the rubber, as he has got a decent exit. I'm checking my mirror, seeing where he's going to be, and then trying to be really composed and not push too hard. In the wet, the biggest trouble you'll have is pushing too hard, so I'm trying to really focus the pressure into being smooth. Now, as you see, it's lap 2 and I'm moving slightly wider to the dry line, testing how slippy it is. I see the car in front going wide on the entry and I want to try it for myself. I'm not fully sure if I'm going to like that line or if it is the best, so I'm just doing a 50-50 between full wet and sort of dry line, trying to understand where the grip is at. Now, if you're enjoying the video so far, please like and subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you enjoyed, what you didn't, any camera angles you'd like to see, etc. And the key takeaway with conditions like these is you see I'm constantly experimenting. This lap at Druids, I go in really wide, turn in really late and cut back. I see how it compares to the Anglia in front, and I see how it feels. It might feel faster, but it feels really on the edge and difficult to replicate, so I modify the line slightly. The interesting thing is at this stage in the race, I was one of the fastest on track, but not the fastest, so everyone either knew brands in the wet before, or had learnt it just as quick as I had. But the difference was, in the second half, I kept learning, kept progressing and getting faster, whereas other people seemed to stagnate. So for the last 7 or 8 minutes of the race, I was fastest every lap and getting faster every lap. And again, at the very next corner, I try second. I don't quite rev match perfectly, so the rear steps out on entry. I do come back to it and try it later, but at this point I'm not entirely sold. But at least I've tried it early on so I can learn for the remaining 15 minutes. Now here you see the first time that my gears go wrong in this race. The reason behind this is fascinating and one I'm yet to solve. It seems that some part of the selector, the linkage, the box, whatever, twists, so that when I've got lateral load or I'm mid-corner, it makes it trickier to get into gear. Now later on in the race I have the same problem again, but I work out what it is and I make sure I always brake in a straight line. But it was only after the race that I realised this. Druids, here where I struggled, is a right-hander, and I struggled to get the gear stick over to second. It feels like the gate's just not there, I end up putting it in fourth. Earlier on in the season when I was testing at Silverstone, I was going round a left-hander, and I tried to get it into second, and I overshot and caught reverse. So when I turn left, it's opening up and becoming easier to go to the left, and when I turn right, it's doing the opposite. So as I mentioned later on in the race, I'm always braking and changing down in a straight line, and in future I'll be conscious of it as well. This mistake allows the grey Anglia to just breeze back past. Now clearly with the excitement of getting back past me, he spins. Now this is my warning, like I said, that clearways is a corner that you could bin it. And you see I'm a little bit hesitant as to which way I go, because I know that if he releases the brakes at one point, he's going to drift forwards onto the racing line. If he releases them at another time, or holds the brake like he did, he's going to stay where he is. But either way, I don't want to commit until I know. In the end, he did the perfect thing, held the brakes, and I was able to drive straight past. Now as the video goes on, you see me have quite a few moments at clearways, but I'm always conscious that I need to nip that slide in the bud as it's only going to get worse, and I don't want to be one of the many spinners there throughout the course of the race. Now, as you see by my hand gestures, I'm getting excited, I'm feeling confident, and I'm saying in a very karting-esque sign language way, let's go, let's have him. And then just as I say that, of course, I pick up the gear again, and it's this time that I realise what's happening. I put 2 and 2 together, and I make sure it doesn't happen again. And it's at this stage in the race that backmarkers really start to play their role. Not necessarily in terms of slowing people down or holding them up, but in terms of providing opportunity. People are distracted, people are confused, they're not on the line that they expected, and how are they going to respond to that? As we get to Graham Hill, I see there's quite a few backmarkers up front. I've just caught up to the blue car, so I'm thinking this could be my opportunity. I make my intentions clear to the red Mustang, and he lets me buy into Surtees so that I've maybe got a chance going into clearways. The Mini goes nice and tight offline, gives us lots of room, and we both go around the outside as we normally do. So not much change there other than a potential distraction. But here is the most beautiful move of the race from my point of view. So when we look here, I'm racing the blue car, and the yellow car with the blue stripe, another Anglia, is a backmarker being lapped. Now traditionally, of course, you go up the inside to make an overtake, and I don't think the blue car expected to catch up so quickly, so he was already on the outside and had committed. I didn't either expect to be coming from this far back, but I had no idea this move was going down even after I started braking. But when I saw that the blue car had committed to the outside, and he can't brake and turn aggressively and dart to the inside as it's so wet, I thought, okay, as long as I go up the inside of the yellow car, I'm blocking the yellow car and the blue car. So, brief summary. Yellow car, middle. Blue car commits outside. I block the yellow car blocks the blue car, and boom, we're into P2. Now, much to my surprise after making this move, James Ibbotson was only just up ahead. He must have been held up by the backmarkers quite badly. Up until this point, I had no idea where he was. I couldn't even see him in the distance. Then all of a sudden, I'm into P2, and I'm looking at P1. At this point, I know, again, pushing is the enemy of speed in the wet, so I'm really trying to focus on hitting my markers, being super smooth, eliminating the slide, and when I put the power down, driving out of the corner, not sideways around it. By the time we get to Surtees, I find myself in a similar situation, again with minis, and this time I know I've got to be a bit aggressive getting past this first mini if I want to capitalise on the second mini, hindering James. I got past the red mini, and the blue mini went to the outside, so we were both forced to the inside, which has been the slippiest line all race. It then became a pure matter of traction out the corner and straight line speed. Now again, wanting to remain off of the rubber, I made sure I was super patient at the very slippery apex and ran tight all the way around the corner while James washed a bit wider onto where I thought the rubber was. There must be a little bit of fairy dust in James's engine because I got a slightly better exit. Once he dropped out of sight, I thought he was gone, and then he came alongside and overtook me back. I wasn't too concerned because I had the inside line and I knew that I'd been really strong into the brakes into that corner the whole race. I get the move done on the brakes before the turn-in point. I make sure I'm really focusing, and at this point the pressure is on. I've never led a race in a car before, so I'm making sure the key thing is to remain calm, not to be flustered by it. And the whole time I'm going, make sure you remain calm, make sure you're smooth, make sure you hit your markers. So not genuinely calm, but trying to channel that energy and that focus into being smooth and putting into practice what I've learnt. And this was actually my fastest lap of the race. Not by much. From this point forward I was lapping within about a tenth every lap, but I think having that pressure, knowing that I could not mess up, was what made this my best lap. So anyway, on the exit of paddock, I've got the move done, I check the mirror, and I run out wide as I know I've got the space to. Again, I move to defend Druids because it's a great overtaking opportunity and he's not miles back. I'm super conscious here to change down early into second in a straight line. I get a great exit out of Druids, no slide, and then I know I don't need to defend into Graham Hill, and pretty much the rest of the race, I'm using my own lines. I pulled out a really good gap. I was just focusing on being consistent and not making any mistakes. Until the last corner of the last lap, that is. But before we get to that, I'm just going to play you one of my better, faster laps so you can listen to the engine, really focus on my driving and what I do. And for me, the key thing to watch here is my steering. How smooth I am, how I'm putting the power down, how I'm being really patient, as this is what I believe led to the success and is why I was so quick in the wet. My karting experience really came into its own here. Got into the lead with 8 minutes to go, and it was the longest 8 minutes of my life as I'm watching the marshals post across the finish line, begging that last lap ball to come out. And when it did, the pressure was on to keep it together and be really smooth. I don't want to stop pushing and change what I've done the rest of the race, because equally that could lead to a mistake, but also I don't want to push really hard and crash anyway, so it's a massive balancing act. Then on the very last lap, someone spins at, you guessed it, the very last corner, Clearways, the corner that's caused so much trouble this race. I'm lapping both of these cars, and the red car I think has seen me. He goes wide, so I go to go up the inside of him. Just as the Cortina is slowly pulling back onto the track, I work out that the red car has not seen me, and he sort of pinches me against the Cortina much closer than I planned, probably about a foot away. So a silly mistake, I shouldn't have gone for it. I had a huge gap, I didn't need to do it. It was not a very mature decision, and one I won't make again, but lesson learnt, and thankfully everything was okay. Now, that was a pretty great race in my opinion, and from my point of view. So, where did it all go so wrong, I hear you cry? Well, the beautiful camera angle from the cam box that you've been enjoying throughout this video, I think is the best camera angle. It really puts you in my boots. It sits on my helmet there, just above my eye line. You get to look in the mirrors, everything. It's an amazing camera angle, and everyone has said so. But it's not homologated with my helmet, and for that, I was stripped of my race win. It was a complete oversight on my part, and it is of course my responsibility to check the regs, but this regulation escaped me with devastating consequences. A lesson well and truly learned, I'd say. Although it was a pretty tough couple of days, looking back on it now, it was still an amazing experience and one I will never forget. So I need to thank everyone that got me here, everyone that's helped me out, and also second place, now first place, James Ibbotson, that helped me prep my car for this event. I look forward to making more videos like this at the race events. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like as this helps it spread to more people. Subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and let me know in the comments, what did you enjoy about this video? What do you want to see more of? See you in the next one.